Isn't there anyone you represent who has traveled on Epstein's plane or been abused at any of his other locations? I found the question unnerving, especially given the time of his call and my current talks with Virginia. I'm admittedly quick to be suspicious, but my mind was racing. So I mentioned that he says stuff like, I found it quite unnerving, set off a bunch of suspicions, because this is how he speaks about his meetings with Stan. And he says, was Stan working with Epstein? Was David? Had Epstein tagged Virginia's passport in order to receive a ping from the Justice Department if she ever entered the country? Despite these thoughts, which were a bit frantic, I told Stan that I had recently been contacted by Virginia Roberts and divulged parts of her story and that had already been made public, but nothing else. A couple of days passed and Stan called again. David and I would like to meet with you. How soon can you fly to New York? I gave him a proposed itinerary. He told me to call him when I landed, and he would tell me where to meet him. Waiting until the last minute to figure out where to have lunch is not an unusual thing for people to do in New York, but given my lurking suspicions, I found it odd. It smelt like an Epstein setup. So he's already saying it out loud, and he's already explaining it.
Yeah.
So he goes to buy a USB drive that can record the conversation secretly from a shop, but it ends up all going wrong apparently, and he ends up having to leave it behind because all electrics have to be left outside by security, I think. So thinking that was headed for a setup, I tried to remember connections I was aware of between Jeffrey Epstein and his friends that might have tied him to David Bowie's law firm. I looked for Alfredo Rodriguez's journal and I couldn't find David. Next, I reviewed copies of message pads that had been confiscated in the trash pulls at Epstein's house. I paged through the calls from National Security Advisor Sandy Berger, former United States Senator George Mitchell, and movie producer Harvey Weinstein, more than a decade before he would be arrested on rape charges. I continued flipping through the messages, and then there it was, like he wasn't expecting to find it. A call from David Bowie. According to the message pad, he had called Epstein's house on February 25th, 2005. There was no message associated with the call, only a handwritten note that someone named David Bowie had personally called and left his cell phone number asking that Jeffrey call him back. Was this a benign thing, a return business call to a business call placed by Epstein, or was he, as I feared, Epstein's lawyer, a spy? There was only one way to find out. What way is that, Brad? Oh, he goes to meet them, of course. And there's another set of like amazing, like sort of narrative put into the book. But basically, I spent most of the lunch interrogating Stan. This is while while he's meeting him up for the first time, about his past and present, making him comfortable until he volunteered that he had known Epstein. So this is Stan Pottinger's business partner talking about his first meeting with Stan, and he's confirming in his own book that he had known Epstein. He had worked with him briefly many years before. Really, Stan explained that after he'd left the Justice Department in Washington, he'd worked as an investment banker in New York. As you see from the records, that's from 1981, he says, onwards, where a client introduced him to Epstein. They were not in the same firm, but the two of them had shared an office for a few weeks. He may have thought he was being candid and forthcoming, but all it did was ramp up my suspicions. And of course, I then note that this is the period he's described. This is a time where he's smuggling guns in arms in Iran with Cyrus Hashemi, Jamal, Adnan Khashoggi, nearly did it there.
Epstein.
It's unbelievable.
I think I've heard of him. I think.
Do you say Jason Epstein? I know. Oh, no. Jonathan Epstein. Is that what I know him? No. Oh, Jackie Epstein. You must be talking about him. Yeah, he knows all the Epstein.
It's crazy that it's just in black and white in his book. Like he's admitting they knew each other. They even shared an office.
It gets worse.
It feels like he's just trying to take a step back and say,
"Yeah,
I didn't know any of this."
Yeah, like acting like he's a legal professional. He knows everything. He knows all about the law. He knows what he's doing wrong. He knows what a conflict of interest is. And still, I asked if David knew Jeffrey, and Stan said as far as he knew, the answer was no. At this point, Stan really wasn't doing anything to dispel my concerns. since I knew that in the past David had left a private message for Jeffrey to call him. Stan wanted to talk about Epstein, but I delayed that. When we finished eating, I told Stan it didn't make much sense for me to explain things twice, once to him and once to David. So why didn't we ask David to come join us? Stan suggested instead that we go to David's office. I got my backpack and we jumped in a cab to 575 Lexington Avenue. But this merely raised another red flag. David's office was in the same building as Jeffrey Epstein's main attorney, Darren Indyke. Oh, I mean, really, what the hell? So I asked, what do you think? This is later, right? So he goes and he meets with them, and it is honestly, if you read the book yourself, and it's a shame that anybody has to read Relentless Pursuit, but you go, what the hell is this? This is a circle jerk, and he's pretending, and he's driving across to Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer's building, where he's gonna just be like co-opted right at the start of the case. I mean, that's what they did in 2009. The 2009 case, right at the start, they started co-opting everybody, and Darren Indyke and other were doing that. And the start of the second case, they started doing it exactly again. And it got to a point where Pottinger and Edwards was so suspicious of Pottinger, they decided to set up a business with him. So I asked, oh, God, I nearly tipped everything over. So I asked, what do you think about the idea of having a New York office and asking Stan Pottinger if he wants to be my law partner? He's saying this to Bethany Henderson, I think, Henderson, and the other one, the girls who work with him. Both reacted almost immediately with reasons why they thought it would be a great fit. But look, Stan, in my view, was David Bowie's personal 007. Not that either of them would put it that way, but I did. I thought that there was a pretty good chance that my proposition could make Stan laugh, though he'd be too diplomatic to do that out loud. I mean, who was I kidding? But I didn't have much time to game the idea. My old firm was winding down fast, and I was trying to do a million things to get a new one started. It took Stan no time to say, I'm in. David Bowie said, had told him long ago that forming a small firm had many appealing advantages and tempted virtually all lawyers at one time or another. That's such a Stan Pottinger line. And yeah, so that's extremely interesting. Let's come out of that now.
I love the fact that like you made the joke about, he's so suspicious of this guy and his agenda that he decides to start